Welcome back to the Big Picture Podcast. My name is John Suchocki, your host. Today we are here with Stephanie Kellar. Stephanie works as a civil engineer in the engineering department for the City of Encinitas, California. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us here at the Big Picture Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Stephanie, could you describe for us the work that you do?
Sure. Working for a city, I'm a senior civil engineer, so I lead the team of people that builds municipal projects, city projects. And that means we build everything from parks to lifeguard stations to sewer systems.
To that rotary in the highway?
We do all kinds of projects, and we take them from start to finish. So we come up with a concept and have a particular goal in mind for a site. We'll generate a series of alternatives, come up with a design, take it through public, all the way through building and constructing it, the whole thing,
hire the
start
right
to
people,
finish.
Make sure it's up to code.
Yes, all of that fun stuff. There's a lot of project management, and there's a little bit of design and a lot of construction management, actually instructing the contractor out in the field how to do it, what he needs to do, how to do it right.
Could you define what we mean by engineering?
In this case, engineering is the engineering I do is civil engineering, meaning that we work on civil infrastructure projects, so your roads, water, sewer, things like that. We also have geotechnical engineers, structural engineers on staff. So
geotechnical, like
earthworks, soils engineers. And
so the water flows how it should flow and not flood.
Yes. And you build upon soil that is firm and designed to actually accept what you're building on it and designed to last based on the input that you get from a field investigation. Or we have structural engineers that are making sure that our structures are going to stand up in a seismic event, things like that. So engineering is really such a huge word. I like to think of it as just
building?
Scientific problem solving. It's bigger than building to me.
Then you need to know how to build it, what to build, why to build.
All of that. I think it's a very big field, and you have a number of different specialties in the field. Mine is, I'm trained in structural engineering, and then I practice in civil.
I want to ask you about a project in Encinitas relative to a set of steps or a path that went down a cliff to the beach property. Could you describe that project?
You're talking about our Beacons Beach project?
Yes.
I assume, yes. Okay, well, that's very exciting. Encinitas is a coastal community, so we are right on the ocean, and because there's so much seismic activity in California, the interesting thing about being coastal in Encinitas is that our bluff nearest to the water's edge sits about 80 to 120 feet higher than sea level. So you stand on the top of the bluff and the ocean is way down there. People need a way to get from that top of the bluff down to the ocean, and we have only a few spots physically where it's possible to do that, and Beacons is one of them. Beacons Beach is a famous surfing beach. It's a great spot. It's been there forever, and people have been accessing it since the 30s or 40s in a kind of formal way. They've constructed their own stairs to get down there.
Is it a path going down the bluff?
It's a path connecting stairs that are cut into the sand.
Stairs cut into the
Stairs
sand?
cut into cemented sand.
Oh,
So people have gone out with shovels and they've just kind of cleared the way over the years, and they've created a zigzag path that goes from about 120 feet above sea level down to sea level. They created this unknowingly in a landslide area. So this is an area that is very susceptible to earth movement. We've had several landslides there in recent history. The next landslide will remove the whole beach access, the whole bluff, and will likely remove part of the parking lot, the public parking lot that's up on the top of the bluff.
So not good.
So not good. Not a situation that we like to see.
So you have some responsibility there.
We have responsibility there. We need to keep people safe, and we want to preserve this ability to access the beach. There are a number of different ways to do that. The tricky part is finding a solution that works from an engineering standpoint that is also appealing to the community, because those are two very different types of solutions. From an engineering perspective, we know that the landslide is just going to cave in, and it will take all that material and dump it on the bottom of the beach.
So within a few years, it could be any time, 10 years, 20 years?
Could be any time. It's probabilistic. But given even a relatively small seismic event or a heavy rain year, it could happen tomorrow. So a solution needed to be implemented quickly. We still haven't been able to implement our quick solution.
A step system.
A step system.
Yeah.
So what needs to be done to preserve long-term access is to have a step system that won't fail when the landslide slides. So to do that, you need to go all the way through the unsuitable material and anchor into the firm material that's underneath. It's about 30 feet deep in the case of this bluff.
By the ocean, it's sandy material that makes up the coastal bluff.
It's sandy material, and that sand can be loose and susceptible to sliding, or it can be cemented, in which case it's
like a sandstone.
Like a sandstone, pretty firm bearing. So in this case, you'll need to drill down about 30 to 40 feet to hit that supportive material.
So what's the problem? Can't you just build this stair system?
The problem is that the community loves their beach, and they don't want that access to change. They don't want their beach to look any different. They don't want there to be a landslide either. So
that pathway down that they built over many years, maybe even generations, is a tradition. Then it's an identity for that area. And
exactly.
But surely you just need to let them know it's a hazard and it's about to collapse.
Surely that's all that it will take.
Right?
If you just present this argument logically, everybody will fall in line, right? But
can't you have both? Can't you have the staircase and...
You can. And in fact, we propose to do exactly that, to have both a staircase and to keep the path. But in that case, the community was concerned that if we had an alternate access that would remain stable, like a staircase, that after a landslide event, the city would not commit its resources to rebuilding the path, because there would be another way down. So it
would be all gone. And
yes. So the community sentiment was that they didn't want a backup method, because the backup method would provide an alternative to this character, heritage, personality kind of access that they already have.
So as the lead civil engineer within the City of Encinitas, what role did you play in communicating the engineering with the general public?
I got to be the face of the project, which was hugely enjoyable on this one. I should also say that I live in the community where this project is being considered. So the people that I talk to about the project, they're my neighbors. They are people that live, within half a mile of me. I don't tell them where I live, because there would be so much...
There's contention.
There would be so much contention. There would be so much contention. So my role was through a series of public events, both held at the beach and held at City Hall and other public venues, to try to communicate to the public the need for the project, specifically to try to explain that a landslide there, although it's probabilistic when it will occur, it is an eventuality. So the fact that I can't tell you when it will happen doesn't mean that it won't happen. And communicating that was a tremendous struggle, been a very significant struggle, because we being the project team, we try to come at this problem with logic and facts and a very rationally laid out argument that we hope is intelligible to someone who's not in the field. But somebody who opposes it really just needs to say, well, I don't think that's true. And that kind of caps the conversation. That's the end of it. So being a diplomat, being open, being extremely patient, approaching the problem knowing that each person that speaks to you has a different background and a different skill set. Chances are it's not an engineering mindset. That's all crucially important to really any project, but this is a good example of that.
In a previous episode on the Big Picture podcast, we dedicated some time to the idea of frames. A frame is a mental construct built inside one's head. It colors one's view of the world. And you can throw all the facts and figures we learned at a frame, and they will not stick if they do not fit. And it sounds like you just ran into exactly that, where you were literally providing these facts and figures about potential very lethal destructive event. And because there was uncertainty in there, people couldn't really deal with that. And they were looking at it from a completely different frame, from a different point of view, from a historical point of view, from okay, so there's some probabilistic stuff there, but I'm going to ignore that now because over here it's much more important.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's a wonderful analogy. The frame of reference for the vast majority of the community that was really vocal on this project, their frame of reference was one of heritage and character and wanting things that feel really good to remain unchanged. I think the project team's frame of reference is, yes, we understand all of that and it is beautiful, but it is threatened.
Did you, in any way or form, perceive earlier on, as you're moving into this career, that this is the sort of task you would be encountering?
I think it really snuck up on me project by project. You start in your field and it's unlikely that your supervisor is going to hand you, Beacons Beach or any large contentious project. So you just are kind of going about your career and doing things that are more and more complex. And each year they get more complicated.
The project itself or the community involvement itself, or
both? I think both. Both technically and
socially.
That's a good way to say it. They both get more complicated, but the community outreach piece is by far the more difficult. I work on a team of capital engineers. The reason that there is one of me and several of them, they're all great engineers, is not that my engineering skill set is really any different, but that I've gained some political experience and some communication experience that tends to help people relate to our projects a little bit better. I feel like a huge part of my job is working through these issues with people who come in really angry. And there's no way that you can actually make them like the project. That's not going to happen. But you can try to make them understand why the city is pursuing it. And often that's really all they need. They don't need to agree with it per se, but they need to be able to make some peace with it. And understanding is a way for them to do that.
You're doing a bit of hand-holding.
A little. I guess when I that makes it sound like I'm babysitting. But people are intelligent and they get it, but they're getting it from their own frame of reference.
Yeah.
One of my jobs is to communicate to them a different frame of reference.
Wow. Could you compare how much you learned in college versus how much you've learned since college?
Well, I think one of the most critical things I learned in college was just figuring out what I wanted to do. That took me a long time. It wasn't clear to me when I graduated high school. So I actually went into college with a goal that was yet undefined, I guess. I knew that I wanted a college education. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to study. I thought sociology was interesting, so I majored in that. I thought it was good to have an understanding of financial management and economics, so I majored in that too. Then I graduated with those degrees and thought, wow, I really don't want to do either one of these things. And that's what college taught me, was that I didn't want either one of those paths.
But let me interject. You just talked about two fields that you're specializing in now as an engineer.
Yes, there's absolutely some overlap. But I had imagined when I started with sociology, for instance, I had imagined that I might end up being a psychologist or something along. And I guess in a lot of ways I am. That's your point. That educational background is not irrelevant. It is relevant to what I do, absolutely. But I didn't really know what I truly wanted until I kind of progressed through college and was exposed to more different kinds of topics. That led me ultimately to engineering. So I went back to college before I had really left it and got another degree.
So is that like your third degree?
That's my third degree,
Wow.
But they're all bachelor's degrees. They don't
adds that up.
build upon each other. Yeah, so 3 bachelors. That was the major takeaway, I think, from my college experience, was just having enough exposure to find something that was right for me.
So what you're saying is that you went to college and you learned that which you didn't want to do, but still you're moving forward, and so that had value, right?
It had tremendous value. I truly enjoyed my education, and I wouldn't do it any differently, even knowing now what I know. I would not want to just jump right in and go directly from high school into engineering. Really, engineering community, forgive me for saying this, but engineers are a dime a dozen. There are engineers out there working on all kinds of different projects, and most of them are squirreled away in offices, and they end up working on very minor components of a larger whole. And the thing that allows a person to move past that and work on the bigger picture, the bigger story, is communication skills and the ability to relate to people and a willingness to understand people and being a bit of a generalist. I am not the best engineer that I know, far from it. There are a lot of people I work with that are much stronger than I am technically. But my skill set is really valuable because it allows me to tackle the whole instead of working on just one small piece of it and never getting to see the forest.
So working on the whole, I would imagine, is much more rewarding for you.
That's where the passion comes from, right? You could be designing the pavement that you're going to install at the park, which is nice, or you could be designing the park. And really getting to factor into then the pavement design and what's the playground equipment going to look like. There's a whole skill set there. What are the ball fields going to look like? All of that. And you get to pick up all these additional little pieces of information because you are managing the big picture.
For a student, even though you might not know where you're headed, the key is to understand is that you are headed somewhere, but only
if you keep moving forward. Wherever you are and whatever you're pursuing, invest in that. Put yourself into that. And if it's not the trajectory that you were hoping you would be on, then take the time to figure out what that trajectory is. The important thing is to keep moving forward, get the experience, learn how to bring that varied experience together into a package that makes you who you want to be.
Beautiful.
In college, I learned how to be a part of a team. You end up kind of fluctuating in the leadership team member role in your career, or at least I do in mine. Sometimes I'm team lead, and sometimes I'm a member of the team and I'm reporting to somebody else. And that is something that I learned how to do really well in college through participation on projects and other team skills. So I think the actual content of my classes, the details, I don't really use them on a day-to-day. I use a lot of math. I use a little bit of chemistry. I use a lot of physics, but not to the level that I did in school, in school exercises. More than that, I think I gained the ability to problem solve and to think logically through concepts and kind of break them down and make connections to build them back up, I guess is a way to say it. So
you're pointing there to something we often refer to in the Big Picture podcast, is that there's so much more going on as you're learning content. You're not just learning the stuff. Well, let me say, as you're learning this stuff, you're learning so much more than just the stuff. You're learning about yourself. You're learning how to work with others. You're gaining certain thinking skills that become life skills that you carry with you.
Right.
And you're just pointing out here that, you're not using and probably have forgotten a lot of the detailed stuff that you learned in physics or chemistry. But there's some broad brushstroke stuff that you got, and you've got some basic understanding. You can talk intelligently about maybe some chemistry, but you don't have the nitty-gritty detail in there.
Exactly.
But what you got from that chemistry course is far more than the nitty-gritty detail. It's those life skills.
Exactly. So really I think college can teach a person how to think logically and how to break down a problem and make connections between things that may initially seem disparate. That is key to success in my field, regardless of what type of project I'm working on.
Those are things you're really using on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, those are the skills that define my job, much more than engineering skill set. It's much more broad than that. We have all kinds of specialists that can weigh in to tell me what kind of concrete design I need for this location, the chemical properties that are going to work in this space, or when that landslide is likely to go, what's the probability of it. There are all kinds of people that can weigh in on that, but what is more valuable is the person that can synthesize that information and bring it together into a cohesive story, and then go about drawing connections and problem solving to try to move from that story into a solution.
But then beyond that, you are now the story holder, puts you in the position of telling that story to the general public, the people who will be living that story.
Yes.
Down to the staircase at Encinitas.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And that's, in the office, we talk about this a lot on a day-to-day. How are we going to communicate this story? What exactly does the public need to understand, and how can we break that down into bites that are going to make sense to someone who's not coming from the same type of background?
Yeah. What's the challenge?
It's a lot of fun.
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us here at the Big Picture Podcast. It's an honor to have you on board. All the best to you, especially with that staircase in Encinitas.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Stephanie Kellar, one happy senior civil engineer, City of Encinitas, California. For more on the Beacons Beach Staircase Project, visit our show notes at conceptualscience.com. Epilogue. A year following this interview, sea cliffs at Encinitas, not far from the proposed staircase, collapsed, killing 3 people. Theme music by Zach Jeffrey. Musical flourishes by John Andrew. Our thanks to Stephanie Kellar, civil engineer, project manager, and communicator. Production assistance from Greg Simmons and CPro Music. Note of appreciation to all instructors using Conceptual Academy. Thank you for your support. And to the hardworking student, our thanks to you as well for your learning efforts, which we see as the path to making this world a better place. There's a bigger picture. That's good chemistry. Good chemistry to you.